I am making an Odd Eyes deck. I'm making this deck profile because when I saw that Odd Eyes was getting more support in, I think it was called Dimension Force, I wanted to put this deck back together and play around with it. I do like how this deck is, and once I get the newer pendulum support from Dimension Force, I will update this deck profile. But this is just a fun variant, so if you want to play a more competitive version, just take out some of the other cards that wouldn't be necessary for more hand traps or better extra deck options. Starting with the monsters, I play the one copy of Performer Pal Odd Eyes Synchron. This card makes me laugh just because its name combines three different archetypes: Performer Pal, Odd Eyes, and Synchron. One Odd Eyes Mirage Dragon. Odd Eyes Mirage Dragon's only purpose for bringing this deck is that's level 3. It's a searchable level 3. But anyway, Odd Eyes Synchron has the pendulum effect of once per turn you can target one Performer Pal or Odd Eyes monster you control. For that turn, that face-up monster is treated as a tuner monster. And its level becomes 1. That effect is never used in this variant of the deck. But what is used is its another effect where if it's normal or special summoned, you can special summon one monster from your pendulum scale, and if you do, you can then pendulum or synchro summon using those two monsters. Mirage Dragon doesn't really do anything because it's only in here so that you can summon the one copy of Nirvana High Paladin, which I will go over when I get to that in the extra deck. Then I play 3 copies of Performer Pal Skullcurbat Joker. Joker is the normal summon of this deck, as when it's normal summoned, you can search for any Odd Eyes, Performer Pal, or Magician Pendulum monster that you want. It does have a pendulum effect, but it's never actually used it. Its pendulum effect being you cannot pendulum summon monsters except Performer Pal monsters, Magician Pendulum monsters, or Odd Eyes monsters, and that effect cannot be negated. But like I said, it's typically a normal summon. Then I play 3 copies of Odd Eyes Persona Dragon. I like Persona Dragon in this deck because it's a low scale, and it has the effect and has a monster of once per turn, quick effect, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls that was summoned from the extra deck and negate its effects. And then its pendulum ability is during the end, once per turn during the end phase, if your opponent activate a card or effect that turn that targeted exactly one Odd Eyes card. Your Odd Eyes Pendulum monster you control, and no other cards, while it's in your Pendulum Zone, you can special summon it. And if you do, place one Odd Eyes Pendulum monster from your extra deck in your Pendulum Zone. That effect is never used, as this is typically summoned from the Pendulum Scale with the effect of Performer Pal Odd Eyes Synchron to then synchro summon a level 7 monster. Which could be Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon to summon the other scale, or most of the time it'd be Clear Wing Synchro Dragon, just because most people seem to underestimate the card. Then I play 2 copies of Xion K Magician. Xion K Magician is in this deck so that you can, for its pendulum effect, once per turn target one Xyz monster you control, and change its rank into its rank is treated as a level, so you can have Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon be treated as a level 7 instead of a rank 7. And then you can use it for the additional effects of one of the 2 boss monsters in the extra deck. But its monster effect isn't that bad either, being able to just quick effect, target one light monster your opponent controls, and negate its effects. Then I play 2 copies of Odd Eyes Phantom Dragon. I want to play 3 copies of Phantom Dragon, but I only have 2 at the moment. But since this is mainly just a pure Odd Eyes deck with as little non-Odd Eyes monsters as possible, this card isn't that bad. With its main effect I use in this deck is its monster effect, where if it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, then your opponent then takes additional 1,200 points of damage for each Odd Eyes card in your Pendulum Scale. So if you have 2 and this attacks directly, it'll deal 2,500 points of battle damage and then additional 2,400 points of effect damage. But its pendulum effect is once per turn when an attack is declared involving a face-up monster you control and an opponent's monster. You can have an odd eyes card. While you have an odd eyes card in your other pendulum zone, you can make that monster you control gain 1200 attack until the end of the battle phase. In that, 1200 attack increase will last while even after the card's just after this card in your pendulum scale is destroyed. Then, because it is an Odd Eyes deck, I do feel like you have to play 3 copies of Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. Pendulum Dragon has the pendulum effect of during the end phase you can destroy it to then search for any pendulum monster from your deck that has 1500 or less attack points. And that's monster effect is if it inflicts battle damage while battling a monster, any battle damage is doubled. Then I play 3 copies of the best scale 8 in this deck, and that's 3 copies of Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum. Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum is a normal monster, but has the pendulum effect of if an Odd Eyes card or cards you control are destroyed, then you can special summon 1 Odd Eyes monster from your hand. I believe it's hand, deck, or graveyard. You can only use that effect of Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon once per turn. And then I play 1 copy of Odd Eyes Gravity Dragon. I really like Odd Eyes Gravity Dragon just by the fact that when it's summoned, it returns all your opponent's spells and traps to the hand. I believe it returns them to the hand. Yeah, when it's special summoned, you can return all spells and trap cards to your opponent's hand. Your opponent cannot respond to that effect. And then, if your opponent wants to activate cards or effects, they must first pay 500 life points. So, I really like it because of that, and because it is an Odd Eyes, it is searchable. And the best part is, once you've ritual summoned it once, if it dies, you can just use Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon's effect to just bring it back. Which I think is really funny. Then I play 1 copy of Performapal Odd Eyes Dissolver. Performapal Odd Eyes Dissolver has the pendulum effect where you can just activate its effect to then fuse 2 monsters from your hand or face up field. Or it has the monster effect of when it is special summoned, you can then special summon 1 monster from your pendulum scale and then fuse with it. You can only use each effect of Performapal Odd Eyes Dissolver once per turn. The only downside of Dissolver in this deck is the fact that it is level 8. Which I found out after playing against someone when I thought it was level 7. Then I play 1 copy of Odd Eyes Lancer Dragon. Lancer Dragon just has the effect of if an Odd Eyes card or cards you control be destroyed, such as your pendulum scales trying to be destroyed by Twin Twisters, you can just destroy 1 other card you control instead. So you can have it destroy itself, a back row card. I think it might even be able to destroy cards in your hand. Okay, yeah. Just checking. If a card or cards you control be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy 1 Odd Eyes card in your hand, field, or pendulum scales. Then I play the 1 copy of Odd Eyes. I can't remember if it's Phantom or Phantasma. 1 copy of Odd Eyes Phantasma Dragon. I like this card because it is a scale 0, and its pendulum effect is just you can discard 1 card to then add 1 face-up dragon pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand. I really liked using that effect when I was playing Pendulum Treasure, because you can just, so if you have a bad hand but you have Pendulum Treasure and Phantasma Dragon, you could scale Phantasma Dragon, discard something you don't want, which at that time would have been something like Supreme King Dragon Darkworm. Added the pendulum that you put in your face-up extra deck with Pendulum Treasure back to your hand and then scale it, which most of the time would have been an Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon. But I'm not playing Pendulum Treasure, and the main reason I use it is just to be summoned off of Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon. And its monster effect is if you have two cards in your pendulum zones and a face-up Odd Eyes Pendulum monster in your extra deck, you can special summon it from your hand, but you cannot pendulum summon for that turn. But if it battles an opponent's monster, you can make the opponent's monsters 1,000 attack for each face-up pendulum monster in your extra deck, and then during the damage calculation only, and you only use that effect of Odd Eyes Phantasma Dragon once per turn. I like this effect because this deck can get a bunch of monsters in the face-up extra deck very easily. So Phantasma Dragon just helps to beat over any monster your opponent has. So if your opponent has a something like Red Eyes Dark Dragoon that they've already used to negate with, then you can actually have Odd Eyes Phantasma Dragon attack the Dragoon, and then have it lose at least 3,000 or 4,000 attack points. And then for the last card in this deck that I play 3 copies of Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon. I've only ever summoned this card as a monster once, but its main purpose in this deck is its monster effect of you can discard it to then be able to pay 500 life points, or discard and pay 500 life points to then add any level 8 or lower pendulum from your deck to your hand. Or dragon pendulum monster. So with this, it's literally any of the other monsters as long as it's a pendulum. Moving on to the spells, I play 1 copy of Smile World just because I think it's cute to play with one of the boss monsters in this deck. The Smile World just increases the attack of all monsters on the field by 100 for every monster in play. So if each player has 5 monsters in play, then every monster gains 1,000 attack. I'll go over why I think this card's cute to play with one of the extra deck monsters once I get to it, but if you don't want to play Smile World, then I'd probably just take it out for something like Harpy's Feather Duster or Monster Reborn. Then I play 1 copy of Terraforming to search for this deck's field spell, which is probably one of the best field spells in the game for an archetype. And then I play 1 copy of Odd Eyes Advent. Advent just lets you tribute or ritual summon any dragon ritual monster. Or lets you ritual summon it from your hand or graveyard. But you have to tribute pendulum monsters who, from your hand or field, whose levels equal or exceed that monster's level. But if your opponent has 2 monsters while you have none, you can also use monsters from your extra deck. So, like, if you activate this card while your opponent has 2 or more, then you can just give up something like Nirvana High Paladin, for example, to just be able to ritual summon an Odd Eyes Gravity Dragon. But once the Dimension 4 set gets released, you can also use this to pendulum summon Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph Dragon. Then I finish off the 1-of spells. I play the 1 copy of Miracle Synchrofusion. This just lets you fusion summon a fusion monster at, let's say, Synchro's material by banishing materials from your field or graveyard. Which this is one of the few things I've actually thought of by myself with this game, without any kind of help. That was probably one of the best things I've ever thought of, which is using Miracle Synchrofusion to summon your 1 copy of Supreme King Zark. Then for the 2-of spells, I play 2 copies of Duelist Alliance. This spell just you have a card in your pendulum scale, just lets you search for any card from your deck that has the word pendulum in its name. So you can use it to search for Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon. Once it gets released, Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph Dragon. The only reason I play 2 of it, though, is the fact that you can only activate 1 Duelist Alliance per turn. Then moving on to the 3-ofs, I play 3 copies of Spiral Flame Strike. This card you can activate as many times as you want a turn, but when it's activated, you can either, if you control an Odd Eyes card, target 1 card on the field and destroy it, or you can add a level 7 Odd Eyes monster from your deck to your hand, or a face-up level 7 Odd Eyes Pendulum monster from your face-up extra deck. Then I play 3 copies of Sky Iris, probably being the best field spell for an archetype you get, as it protects both Odd Eyes, Fornapal, and Magician Pendulum cards that are in your pendulum scales from being targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects. But it also has the effect of once per turn, you can destroy 1 face-up card on your field or in your hand to then search for any Odd Eyes card from your deck. So you have Odd Eyes Advent or Odd Eyes Gravity Dragon in your hand, and you can activate Sky Iris to scale something, destroy it, and then search for the other card you need, for example. Or if you have a bad enough hand, but your opponent has 2 or more monsters, you can then also search for 1 of 3 copies of Odd Eyes Fusion. Odd Eyes Fusion just lets you fusion summon one Dragon Fusion monster by using monsters from your hand or field as material. Or if your opponent has 2 or more monsters, you can also use cards from your extra deck as fusion material. The reason I like this card at 3 in this deck is because if you can activate it once while you control no monsters, then that's already 3 of the 4 materials you need for a Supreme King's Dark. Because you would just fuse Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon with Odd Eyes Meteor Burst to then fusion summon Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon. With Miracle Synchro Fusion, that's a Fusion Synchro NXZs. So all you really need after that point is a Pendulum. But this version of the deck is just built to summon Supreme King's Dark. A more competitive version obviously wouldn't be caring about that, but this is my version of the deck, so I play how I want to. Moving on to the extra deck, I play the 1 copy of Prevalent Verte Anaconda. This card is the reason that I only play the 1 Miracle Synchro Fusion. Because most people, when they see this, they'll think, oh, he's going to summon a Dragoon or a Phoenix Enforcer. And then I just go, nope, Zark. It's funny. Then I play 1 copy of number 89, Diablosis the Mindhacker. I like Diablosis the Mindhacker in this deck just because of how this deck can easily summon a lot of level 7 monsters. And Diablosis the Mindhacker has the effect of once per turn, you can detach a material to look at your opponent's extra deck and banish 1 card from it face down. So if I go first, then I'll typically be trying to make Diablosis the Mindhacker so I can look at my opponent's extra deck and get rid of something I don't like Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, Destiny Hero Destroyer, Phoenix Enforcer. And then during the battle phase, if it destroys a monster, then at the end of the battle phase, you can banish 1 card from your opponent's graveyard face down. And then if a card your opponent owns is banished face down, then you can banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck face down for each face down card they have banished. So if you use this effect and then you attack with it, destroys a monster and they banish card from your opponent's graveyard, you get to banish the top 2 cards of their deck. And then on the next turn, you do the exact same thing. This time, rather than getting to banish 2, they'll have to banish 6, and it just keeps going up the longer it stays in play. So I like Diablosis the Mindhacker just because the longer it's in play, the less deck your opponent's probably going to have left. Then I play 2 copies of Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon. Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon has the effect of when an attack is declared, involving when any player's monster declares an attack, you can detach a material to negate that attack, and then you can summon 1 Odd Eyes monster from your, I believe it has to be graveyard. Okay, you can summon 1 Odd Eyes monster from your hand or graveyard. And then if this card leaves the field, or this exceeds summon card is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon an Odd Eyes monster from your extra deck other than another copy of Absolute Dragon. You can use each effect of Absolute once per turn. So I just like this card because of how it's kind of like Utopia, can negate an attack, but rather than just negating the attack, it also lets you summon something like Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, or Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, something like Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon, to use that as material. And then if it dies, you can go, oh no, I guess I'll summon a Vortex Dragon. But moving on for the extra deck, I also play 1 copy of Odd Eyes Raging Dragon, 1 Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon, and 1 Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon Overlord. Odd Eyes Raging Dragon is one of the many boss monsters of this deck because of how, if it has an Xyz monster as material, which most of the time would either be an Absolute Dragon or Overlord when I get to it, it has the effect of it can make 2 attacks per battle phase, and it can use 1 of its materials to destroy every other card in play, or every card your opponent controls. It can destroy as many cards your opponent controls as possible, and then it gains an additional 200 attack for each card destroyed. This is the card that I really like using Smile World with. Just because if you have this card by itself, but your opponent has 3 or 4 monsters, then you can activate Smile World. It'll gain 4 or 500 attack points Then you activate its effect to then destroy every card your opponent controls, which if they had that in like 2 face downs, then it would also be gaining an additional 1200. So that with 2 attacks, so that just guarantees that Odd-Eyes Raging Dragon can just be certain to deal as much damage as possible. Then Odd-Eyes Rebellion Dragon's only in this deck to be sent to the grave as the pendulum requirement for Odd-Eyes Vortex Dragon. But if you do summon it, then it has the effect of you can detach 1 material to destroy as many level 7 or lower monsters your opponent controls as possible. And then they take 1,000 points of damage for each monster destroyed by its effect. And then it can make either 2 additional or 3 attacks. Yeah, then it can make 3 attacks during each battle phase. And then Odd-Eyes Rebellion Dragon Overlord. I don't remember what it does because I have yet to play a game with this in the deck. I just know it is important. But Overlord's effect is you can also Xyz summon this card by using a Rebellion Xyz monster you control as material, where you then transfer its materials to this card. And then you can Pendulum Summon. If you can Pendulum Summon level 7, you can also Pendulum Summon this card from your face-up extra deck, which these two share as well. And then if this card was Xyz summoned using a rank 7 Xyz monster material, it can make up to 3 attacks during each battle phase. If this card in your monster zone is destroyed, you can place this card in your Pendulum Zone, and then you can only special summon Odd-Eyes Rebellion Dragon Overlord once per turn. Then its Pendulum effect is once per turn, you can special summon this card from your Pendulum Zone, then special summon from your extra deck 1 Rebellion or the Phantom Knights monster using this card as material. In which case, it's treated as an Xyz summon, and then you can attach 1 card from your Pendulum Zone to it as material. So pretty much this just lets you summon Odd-Eyes Rebellion Dragon a bit easier. But most of the time, you will be wanting to summon Raging Dragon, although Rebellion Dragon does have its moments of being able to attack 3 times. Moving on to the Synchros, I play 1 copy of Odd-Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon, 1 copy of Clear Wing Synchro Dragon, and 1 copy of Nirvana High Paladin. Meteor Burst Dragon has the effect of when it's special summoned, you can target 1 card in your Pendulum Zone and special summon it. However, it cannot attack the turn you use that effect, or for the rest of the turn. And you can only use that effect of Meteor Burst Dragon once per turn, and then monsters your opponent's control in your opponent's possession cannot activate their effects during the battle phase. And then Clear Wing Synchro Dragons in this deck because of how many people underestimate what this card is capable of, which is if your opponent activates the effect of a monster that's level 7 or level 5 or higher, it can negate that effect, and if it does negate it, destroys it. Or your opponent activates a monster effect that targets a face-up level 5 or higher monster on the field, you can negate that effect and destroy it. And if a monster is destroyed by the effect of Clear Wing Synchro Dragon, it then gains that monster's attack points. This card single-handedly have won me a couple of games before, where my opponent would summon a Mechaba. I've already used its negate. I go to crash into it with Clear Wing Synchro Dragon. They attempt to save Mechaba with Alistair. But because Alistair targets a level 5 or higher monster on the field, my Clear Wing got to say no, and then gained 1,000 attack points and just beat over the Mechaba. Or back when Ib, the level 5 World Child Synchro monster, was being played in Dinos, I always summoned this card if I went first, because the Dino combo at that time had to use Ib, and if you just negate and destroy it, then they can't really do anything, which I thought was beautiful. Because again, no one ever suspected Clear Wing being a good card. Then I play 2 copies of Odd-Eyes Vortex Dragon, and Vortex Dragon is special summoned. I believe it has to be, yeah. When it's special summoned, you can target 1 face-up attack position monster your opponent controls, return it to the hand, and your opponent will activate a card or effect. Then you can return 1 face-up pendulum monster from your extra deck back to the deck to then negate that card, and if you do, destroy it. The only downside of this card is the fact that its effect to put something back to negate is not a cost. Then I play 1 copy of Performer Pal Gatling Ghoul. Gatling Ghoul has the effect of when it's fusion summoned, it can deal, how much is it? 200 points of damage to your opponent for every card that's in play. And then you can target one monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and then deal damage to your opponent equal to that monster's attack on the field. So Gatling Ghoul I just really like because of the fact that it's really good if you're in time, which I really hate. I like turns better. I don't mind that being said. Then I play one copy of Ruin Eyes Pendulum Dragon. Ruin Eyes has the effect of, if it is fusion summon a level 4 or lower spellcaster, then it gets 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. Or if you use a level 5 or higher spellcaster, it gains 3 attacks on, or it gets 3 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. But if it's pendulum or fusion summoned by using a pendulum summon monster, then it's unaffected by your opponent's card effects. But so I just like it because of it being able to attack 3 times and be unaffected by things. Because in this deck, you're always going to be using Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon and, what's it called? Performapal Odd Eyes Dissolver. So always get 3 attacks and be unaffected because you have to Pendulum Summon first. Then the last card being Supreme King's Arc. This card's only in this deck because it's my favorite Pendulum monster, as well as the fact that when it's Fusion Summon, just destroys your opponent's entire board, and it cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects. But that is it for my Odd Eyes deck profile. If you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck, any decks I see me make, or decks I see face each other, feel free to comment down below. Thanks for watching.